I don't normally dwell on the unhinged rantings of anti-Semites, but when Jew hate makes headlines,
Anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism.
when rappers proclaim,
I see good things about Hitler also.
when radical Hebrew Israelites gather en masse to preach conspiracy theories, it's time to speak up.
We support Hitler. Right. Because Hitler was killing your people and Hitler knew who the real Jews was.
These groups endorse a toxic mix of anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and a whole lot of other hatreds. They've inspired hate crimes and murder, and their numbers are growing rapidly. So who are these guys? Where did their beliefs come from? And how should the Jewish community respond to them? Our story starts with one of history's ugliest injustices, the transatlantic slave trade. For 400 years, the backbone of the world's economy was the buying and selling of human beings based on the color of their skin. Enslaved Africans in the Americas suffered every torture you can imagine. But while bodies can be enslaved and maimed and killed, faith is much harder to destroy. These communities found hope in the biblical story of the Exodus. Like the ancient Israelites, they knew firsthand the bitterness of slavery. Most enslaved Africans were forcibly converted to the Christianity of their enslavers. But for some, the profound identification with the ancient Israelites crystallized into a theology known as Hebrew Israelism.
As far back as the plantation, if you listen to a lot of old Negro spirituals, wade in the water, go down Moses, but they are spiritually connecting to the strength of Israel. It's not necessarily just about identity. It's about a sort of like spiritual connection to God.
No two groups of Hebrew Israelites were quite alike. Some worshipped in a style nearly identical to Pentecostal Christianity, with Jesus front and center. Others adopted mainstream Jewish practices. Some mashed up the two and added a dash of African nationalism. No matter how they practiced, all congregations believed they were the descendants of the ancient Israelites who had once been enslaved in Egypt. But here's the crazy part that we never see mentioned in history textbooks. It's possible that some enslaved Africans identified so strongly with the Israelites because they were Jews, or at least of Jewish descent. After all, there's been a Jewish presence in Africa for thousands of years. You may be familiar with the Igbo of Nigeria or the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, but did you know that there were enough Jews in the West African Songhai Empire for the king to issue an edict of expulsion in 1492? So we shouldn't dismiss the possibility that at least some Africans held Jewish or Israelite identities well before their enslavement in the Americas. For the most part, early Hebrew Israelite communities got along with mainstream Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews. But there's always gotta be one maniac. A maniac is Arabic/Hebrew slang for a jerk. In the 1880s, that maniac was one Frank S. Cherry, a self-proclaimed prophet and founder of one of the earliest Hebrew Israelite communities, the Church of the Living God, the pillar ground of truth for all nations. Unlike other Hebrew Israelite congregations, Cherry believed that Black Americans were the only real Israelites, which made non-Black Jews usurpers of their identity and heritage. Cherry's Shabbat services often involved long sermons about the evils of the Jews who would get what was coming to them in the year 2000 when Jesus would return to start a race war that would end with white folks in chains. Obviously, I'm not going to spend time debunking the unhinged theology of a man who believed that the earth was square. Did I not mention that? That was big for Cherry. But I do have to address one of his ideas, because unfortunately, it's one that a lot of people share. That Jews are white Europeans. That's completely false. Jews are a Semitic people. Our culture, our nation, and our identity originated in the land of Israel. Add in a couple millennia of exile that sent us to every corner of the earth, and you get a vast and dazzling variety of ways to look and be Jewish. So yeah, there are a lot of reasons that I don't love Frank Cherry's ideology. And I want to stress, neither did most Hebrew Israelites. In fact, some of the founders of later Hebrew Israelite congregations were mixed-race Jews of color, adding an extra dimension to their identity. So where do they belong? Are they Jews? Are they Hebrew Israelites? Are they both? Well, again, that really depends on who you ask. So I ask. In short, the Hebrew Israelite community is pretty diverse. But Asriel Moore, a 31-year-old Hebrew Israelite living in Israel, isn't particularly interested in definitions or labels.
I'm not focusing on what separates us. I'm focusing on what connects us. If we want to focus on things that separates us, we can find a lot of those things. But my question is, what unites us? And what unites us is actually the desire to return back to our homeland.
Unfortunately, no community is exempt from the prejudices embedded within the laws of their society. In the racially segregated societies of the 19th and 20th centuries in America, many would-be Jews of color who were seeking access to Judaism found those doors closed, forbidden from Jewish communities or houses of worship, barred from the knowledge and practice they saw as their birthright. That exclusion was painful, even traumatic. And it's one reason why the Jewish and Hebrew Israelite communities have such a complicated relationship. Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, founder of the largest Hebrew Israelite community in America, understood this. As the head of the Commandment Keepers movement, he dedicated much of his life to building bridges with mainstream Jewish communities. Though his rejection from the New York Board of Rabbis left Rabbi Matthew feeling stung and discredited, he never let his personal hurt calcify into resentment. Instead, he advocated fiercely for Jewish communities in Europe during and after World War II, encouraging his followers to maintain that spirit of brotherly kindness and sympathy towards the Jews. Rabbi Matthew would have been horrified by his former congregant Abba Bivens, who broke from the Commandment Keepers to found a new congregation that would soon give rise to some of the most noxiously anti-Semitic ideologies in America. An ideology rooted explicitly in the hatred of a lot of people, especially Jews. Unsurprisingly, radical Hebrew Israelites traffic in all of the greatest hits of anti-Semitic stereotypes. Jews control the world, Jews control the slave trade, Jews profit off of other people, Jews are the synagogue of Satan, etc., etc., etc. Let me put it this way. You know something's messed up when you see Tom Metzger, a former KKK Grand Dragon, whatever that means, remark approvingly that radical Hebrew Israelites are the black counterparts of us. Us meaning literal white supremacists. Like we needed any more proof that hatred is irrational. But irrational doesn't mean not dangerous. Radical Hebrew Israelite ideology has already killed people.
2 suspects got out of their van and began firing at the JC Kosher supermarket in Jersey City.
4 shot to death in a Jersey City kosher grocery in 2019.
The suspect slashed his way through a house full of Orthodox Jewish worshipers.
5 people stabbed with a machete during a Hanukkah party 2 weeks later, and the movement is spreading. In 2015, the radical Hebrew Israelite group Israel United in Christ had 5,000 members. Today, it's 10,000. But it's not their numbers that worry me. It's their rate of growth, especially as prominent celebrities amplify the most vile parts of radical Hebrew Israelite ideology. And you know what I really hate about this? It creates a rift between 2 peoples who should be the strongest allies. Black and Jewish communities are intimately acquainted with trauma. We should be the first to embrace and uplift each other, with Jews of color like me and so many others as the bridge. And yet, radical Hebrew Israelite rhetoric keeps us divided and afraid. My friend Kazriel experienced this firsthand before converting to Judaism from Hebrew Israelism.
A lot of people told me before I came into mainstream Judaism that Jews are racist or they're bigots and all these other type of things, right? And that I'm not going to ever be accepted into the community. I'm always going to be this outsider. But me living within the community has shown that to be a lie.
Hate flourishes in ignorance, but it's hard to hate someone you know, someone you've talked to and laughed with, someone who's taken the time to get to know you. So I reach out on social media and in real life. I try to build bridges between communities, whether they're Black or Jewish or Hebrew Israelite or some combo of the 3, because Ashriel is right. We shouldn't focus on what divides us. All that really matters is that we acknowledge each other as human beings, each of us created in the image of God.